Sarah Matthews glanced at her phone for the 100th time. 5:47 p.m. Their flight to Boston had already been delayed twice, and the mounting tension in Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport's Terminal 4 was becoming unbearable. Her 6-month-old daughter, Emma, wailed in her baby carrier, her tiny face red with exhaustion, while 5-year-old Tyler pulled insistently at her worn jean jacket. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Tyler whined, dragging his dinosaur backpack across the floor. "You said we'd get chicken." "Nuggets!" "Soon, baby," Sarah promised, attempting to dig through her diaper bag one-handed while bouncing Emma. The movement only made her daughter cry harder. "Just let me find Emma's pacifier first." A businessman in an expensive suit shot them an irritated look as he hurried past, speaking loudly into his AirPods about quarterly reports. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. She'd been on the receiving end of those judgmental stares all afternoon. The overwhelmed single mom with the crying baby and the restless kindergartner. If they only knew what this trip meant. The crumpled doctor's referral letter felt heavy in her jacket pocket. After months of tests, sleepless nights, and maxing out credit cards, they'd finally secured an appointment with one of the top pediatric heart specialists in the country. Dr. Elizabeth Chen at Boston Children's Hospital was their last hope for Emma's complicated condition. Flight 2187 to Boston Logan International Airport has been delayed until 7:15 p.m., the overhead announcement crackled. "We apologize for any inconvenience." Sarah's vision blurred with tears. Another hour and a half. They'd already been at the airport for 4 hours, thanks to the previous delays. Her back ached from carrying Emma's car seat, and her arm trembled from the weight of their oversized diaper bag. "Look, Tyler," she tried to distract her son, pointing to a plane taking off through the massive windows. "That one's just like the one we'll be on." But Tyler had spotted the McDonald's down the terminal and was now in full meltdown mode, throwing himself onto the gray carpet. "You promised nuggets! You promised!" Emma's cries reached a new pitch, and Sarah felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. She'd sold her wedding ring to afford these tickets. Economy class was all she could manage, and the thought of a 5-hour flight with 2 unhappy children in cramped seats made her stomach churn. "Ma'am?" A kind-faced elderly woman approached, holding out a package of tissues. "You look like you could use these." Sarah accepted them gratefully, wiping her eyes while trying to maintain her grip on everything else. "Thank you. It's just been a long day." "Where's your husband? Maybe he could help with the little ones?" The innocent question hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. He passed away last year. Car accident." The words still felt foreign on her tongue, even after 18 months. The woman's face fell. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry." Sarah managed a weak smile, not wanting to dive into the whole story. How James had been driving home from a late shift at the fire station when a drunk driver ran a red light. How she'd been 7 months pregnant with Emma at the time. How the insurance money had barely covered the funeral expenses, let alone the mounting medical bills that followed. Through the glass windows of the first-class lounge, a few passengers observed the scene. Among them, though Sarah didn't notice, was an extraordinarily tall man who had paused his conversation mid-sentence, his attention drawn to the struggling family. "Tyler, please get up," Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking. "If you're good for just a little longer, we'll get those nuggets before the flight." "Promise?" Tyler sniffled, finally pulling himself off the floor. "Cross my heart." Sarah shifted, Emma to her other arm, wincing at the weight. The baby had finally started to quiet down, hiccuping softly against her shoulder. As she gathered their scattered belongings, Sarah caught a glimpse of their reflection in the window. Her messy ponytail, Emma's tear-stained onesie, Tyler's untied shoelaces. They looked exactly like what they were, a family barely holding it together, running on hope and prayers, racing across the country for a chance at saving their smallest member. What Sarah didn't see was the gentle giant in the first-class lounge, already rising from his leather chair, a plan forming in his mind that would change not just their flight, but their entire lives. Inside the first-class lounge, Shaquille O'Neal set down his phone, his attention completely captured by the scene unfolding beyond the glass. At 7 feet 1 inch tall, he was used to standing out in a crowd, but today he was grateful for the relative privacy of the exclusive waiting area. Something about the young mother's determination struck a chord deep within him. He watched as she finally managed to get both children to the McDonald's counter, struggling to hold her squirming baby while helping her son order his much-promised chicken nuggets. His trained ear picked up fragments of her conversation when she answered her phone. "Yes, Dr. Chen, we'll be there. The flight's delayed, but we'll make it to Boston by midnight. I understand how important tomorrow's appointment is." "Yes, I have all Emma's medical records." The worry in her voice was unmistakable. Shaq thought about his own mother, raising him and his siblings, making sacrifices he'd only fully understood years later. A plan began forming in his mind. When the boarding call finally came for Flight 2087 to Boston, Shaq waited until he saw the young family gathering their belongings. He stood up, adjusted his custom-made suit jacket, and walked over with the gentle, careful movements he'd perfected over years of being the biggest person in any room. "Excuse me, ma'am." His deep voice was soft, trying not to startle them. Sarah looked up and up, her tired eyes widening as she took in his enormous frame. Emma, strapped to her chest in a baby carrier, stopped fussing for a moment, fascinated by the giant before her. "I couldn't help but notice you've had a rough afternoon," Shaq said, his signature warm smile spreading across his face. "I have."
"A proposition for you." Tyler tugged at his mother's sleeve. As a dinosaur, a few nearby passengers had already pulled out their phones, recording the interaction.
Shaq paid them no mind, focused entirely on the exhausted mother before him. "I'm in first class, seat 1A, he continued. "It's got plenty of space, and I think it would be a lot easier for you and your little ones. I'd like to switch seats with you." Sarah blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What? Oh no, we couldn't possibly." "I insist," Shaq said, already reaching for their boarding passes. "I've flown enough to know how tough it is with kids in economy. Besides," he winked at Tyler, "I think your son here could use that extra legroom. More than me, right, little man?" Tyler giggled, still staring up in awe. More phones appeared, recording the scene, but Shaq maintained his focus on the family. Sarah's voice trembled. "That's incredibly kind, but really—" "Consider it done," Shaq said firmly but gently, handling the seat change with the gate agent. He pulled something from his pocket, a small notebook, and quickly scribbled something down, folding the paper carefully. "You'll find this in the seat pocket," he said, his voice low enough that only Sarah could hear. "And don't worry about thanking me. Just take care of those beautiful kids." As they boarded the plane, Sarah, still in a daze, she heard snippets of excited whispers. "That's Shaquille O'Neal." "Did you see what he just did?" "I can't believe he gave up his first-class seat." But it wasn't until they were settling into the spacious first-class cabin, Tyler bouncing excitedly in his plush seat, that Sarah realized she'd never even properly introduced herself to their mysterious benefactor. She turned to look back into economy class, catching a glimpse of Shaq folding his large frame into her originally assigned seat, showing nothing but a content smile. What she didn't know yet was that the note in the seat pocket would change everything. But that discovery was still moments away. The gentle hum of the airplane engines had finally lulled Tyler to sleep, his small body curled up in the oversized first-class seat, his beloved dinosaur backpack clutched tightly to his chest. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd seen him look so peaceful. Next to her, Emma had also drifted off, comfortable in the bassinet. The attentive flight attendants had helped set up. "Can I get you anything else, Ms. Matthews?" whispered Jenny, the kind-faced flight attendant who'd been doting on them since takeoff. "Some tea, perhaps? Or a blanket?" Sarah shook her head, still overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. "No, thank you. You've all been so kind already." As Jenny moved away, Sarah noticed other passengers sneaking glances at her family. But these looks were different from the airport. Instead of annoyance, she saw smiles, even a few misty eyes. Word had spread through the cabin about the gentle giant's act of kindness. With both children finally asleep, Sarah allowed herself to relax into the plush leather seat. Her hand brushed against something in the seat pocket, the note. Her heart quickened as she carefully unfolded it. "Dear brave Mama," the note began in surprisingly neat handwriting. "I believe everything happens for a reason. Tonight, our paths crossed, because sometimes angels need a little help from someone." "Who can reach the top shelf? That's a tall person joke. Hope it made you smile. I overheard your conversation about Emma's appointment at Boston Children's Hospital. My foundation specializes in helping families like yours. Inside this envelope, you'll find my personal contact information and that of my team. Call us tomorrow after Emma's appointment. No matter what the doctors say, you're not alone in this fight anymore. I'm serious about the help. And don't worry about trying to say no. My mama taught me that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them help you. Shaq, tell Tyler his dinosaur roar is awesome." Sarah's vision blurred as she pulled out a business card with direct contact numbers. Tucked behind it was something else, a check with an amount that made her hands shake. She quickly tucked it back into the envelope, her mind spinning. "Ms. Matthews?" Jenny had returned with a box of tissues, her expression gentle. "I thought you might need these. You know, he does this kind of thing a lot. Helps people, I mean. Never wants recognition for it either." "I don't understand," Sarah whispered, dabbing at her eyes. "Why would he do this for complete strangers?" Jenny sat down in the flight attendant jump seat nearby. "Sometimes the biggest hearts come in the biggest packages," she said softly. "You should get some rest. Boston's still a few hours away." As if on cue, Emma stirred in her bassinet. Sarah reached over to stroke her daughter's cheek, marveling at how the baby's normally troubled sleep seemed easier up here among the clouds. The constant worry that had been her companion for months felt somehow lighter. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her photos, scrolling to the last picture of James, her late husband beaming in his firefighter uniform, taken just days before the accident. "You always said angels were watching over us," she whispered to the image. "I guess you were right." The next few hours passed in a peaceful blur. Tyler woke up once, amazed to find himself served a warm chocolate chip cookie on a real plate. "Are we in heaven, Mommy?" he asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "No, sweetie," Sarah smiled, running her fingers through his messy hair. "Just first class." As the plane began its descent into Boston, Sarah gathered their belongings, carefully folding the note and tucking it into her jacket pocket next to James's photo. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, and, for the first time in months, they seemed to spell out hope rather than worry. What she didn't know then was that this journey had set in motion a chain of events that would touch not just her family's life, but countless others. Somewhere back in economy class, a famous basketball player was smiling, remembering another little girl from long ago who never got her chance at a miracle. But that story, his story, would have to wait. For now, as the plane touched down in Boston, Sarah Matthews held her sleeping children close and allowed herself to believe in angels again, even 7-foot-tall ones who could make tired little boys laugh and scared mothers cried tears of relief at 35,000 feet above the earth. The morning after their flight, Sarah sat in the waiting room of Boston Children's Hospital, trying to focus on filling out Emma's paperwork. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Mom, you've got to see this." Her sister Rachel's text flashed across the screen. "You're everywhere!" Sarah clicked the link Rachel sent and felt her stomach flip. The video of Shaq giving up his first-class seat had gone viral overnight. 3 million views and climbing. The caption read, "NBA legend, Shaq gives up first class. Seat to struggling mom. This is what real heroes look like." Tyler peered over her shoulder at the phone. "Look, Mommy, that's us with the giant man." More notifications poured in. Good Morning America wanted an interview. Ellen's producers had left 3 messages. The local Phoenix news stations were trying to reach her. Even ESPN had called. "Mrs. Matthews?" A nurse appeared with a clipboard. "Dr. Chen is ready to see Emma now." Sarah quickly switched her phone to silent mode, but not before seeing another headline. "Shaq's silent act of kindness shows why he's bigger than basketball." The article had already gathered thousands of comments. This made me cry. That's why he's the big Aristotle, always helping others. Did anyone notice the baby's medical papers? Hope everything's okay. In the examination room, Dr. Chen was reviewing Emma's charts when her own phone chimed. "Oh my," she smiled, showing Sarah her screen. "It seems my newest patient is quite famous." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "It's a bit overwhelming." "Well," Dr. Chen said, turning her attention back to Emma, "let's focus on what matters most right now." While the doctor examined Emma, Sarah's phone continued its silent dance in her purse. Back in Phoenix, news vans had already gathered outside her small rental house. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was turning them away, fiercely protecting Sarah's privacy. Meanwhile, in his Miami home, Shaq was declining every interview request about the incident. His only public comment was a brief tweet. "Just trying to help a mama and her babies. That's what my mama taught me to do. #BeKind." But the internet wasn't letting go. Someone had recognized Sarah from her job at Phoenix Children's Hospital, where she'd worked as a pediatric nurse before Emma's condition forced her to quit. Another viral post emerged. "The mom Shaq helped is Sarah Matthews. She's an angel herself. She was my son's nurse last year. She'd work extra shifts to sit with sick kids whose parents couldn't be there. Now she needs help for her own baby. Universe works in mysterious ways." Full circle, by lunchtime, a reporter had discovered James's story. The heroic firefighter who died saving a family from a house fire, leaving behind a pregnant wife and young son. The narrative grew more powerful. Shaq helps widow of hero firefighter. The story behind the viral video. Sarah remained unaware of most of this as she focused on Emma's examination. But when she finally checked her phone again, she found an unexpected message from Shaq himself. "Don't worry about the media circus. My team will handle everything. Focus on your little warrior princess. We've got your back. Shaq." Attached was a contact number for his personal publicist, who'd already released a statement requesting privacy for the Matthews family during this medical journey. That evening, as Sarah tucked Tyler into his hotel bed, he asked, "Mommy, Are we famous now? Sarah smoothed his hair back. No, sweetheart. We just met someone very famous who did something very kind. Like a real superhero? Something like that. What Sarah didn't know was that while she was focusing on Emma's care, Shaq was quietly putting something much bigger into motion. His viral moment of kindness was about to transform into a movement that would impact countless families. But for now, as Boston's city lights twinkled outside their hotel window, Sarah was grateful for one thing. The attention had crashed the Yao hospital's payment portal. Buying her precious time to figure out how to handle Emma's medical bills, she hadn't even looked at the check Shaq had left in that note, too afraid to hope it could make a real difference. Her phone buzzed one final time before she went to bed. A text from Jenny, the flight attendant. Hope Emma's appointment went well. Just so you know, the big guy asked about you during landing. There's more to his story than you know. Trust the process. Sarah stared at the message, wondering what Jenny meant. But that mystery would have to wait. Tomorrow would bring more doctors, more tests, and hopefully answers for Emma. The rest of the world could keep watching and sharing their story. She had more important things to focus on. Little did she know, their viral moment was just the beginning. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the old photo album, its edges worn from frequent handling. Tyler sat beside her on the hotel room floor, while Emma napped peacefully in her portable crib. "Who's that, Mommy?" Tyler pointed to a photo of a younger Sarah in her nursing scrubs, beaming next to a tall, handsome man in firefighter gear. "That's your daddy," Sarah whispered, tracing James's smile with her finger. "This was the day we both graduated. Me from nursing school, him from the fire academy." The memory washed over her like a wave. James surprising her with champagne after the ceremony, both of them laughing about their shared dedication to saving lives. They'd been so young, so full of dreams. "Tell me about the fire again," Tyler said quietly. He'd been asking more frequently lately, trying to piece together the fragments of memories he had of his father. Sarah pulled him close. Daddy was the bravest firefighter in Phoenix. That night, there was a big fire in an apartment building. He went back in one last time to save a little girl, just about your age. She swallowed hard. He made sure she got out safely to her family. What she didn't tell Tyler was how she'd been 5 months pregnant with Emma that night, how she'd watched the building collapse on the news, how she'd known even before the fire chief showed up at their door. Meanwhile, in a quiet office in Miami, Shaquille O'Neal was having a very different conversation. "Everything's arranged," his foundation director reported. "The hospital bills are being handled anonymously, just as you requested. But Shaq, this is bigger than just one family. The publicity from your airplane gesture, we could help, so many more." Shaq stared at an old photograph on his desk, one the public had never seen. A small girl with his mother's smile, wearing a hospital gown. "Tell me about the other families," he said softly. "The ones like Sarah's." His team had been working overtime, identifying families struggling with pediatric heart conditions. The numbers were staggering. So many parents facing impossible choices, just like his mother had decades ago. Back in Boston, Sarah finally opened the check from the airplane. The amount made her gasp, enough to cover not just Emma's immediate treatments, but years of follow-up care. Attached was a note. First installment, non-negotiable. S.E. She didn't notice the other papers that had fallen from the envelope. Documents showing that an anonymous donor had already arranged to cover all of Emma's medical expenses. The check was meant for their future, for Tyler's education, for a fresh start. In Phoenix, Sarah's empty house sat quiet, but her kitchen table was covered with cards and letters from former patients' families. Nurse Sarah sat with Tommy all night when I couldn't leave his little sister. She sang Disney songs during Jack's chemo. She never gave up hope, even when we did. The stories were finding their way to social media, painting a picture of a woman who'd spent years helping others before life forced her to need help herself. At a small diner near the hospital, two nurses gossiped over coffee about the viral story. "Did you hear?" One whispered. "Shaq's sister had the same condition as that baby. Back before he was famous, before he could afford." She stopped abruptly, realizing she'd said too much. But Sarah knew none of this. She was focused on Emma's latest test results, on Tyler's adjustment to their temporary life in Boston, on putting one foot in front of the other. The viral video had faded from the headlines, replaced by newer stories, newer sensations. Yet behind the scenes, wheels were turning. Shaq's Foundation was quietly revolutionizing its approach to pediatric cardiac care. Other NBA players were making calls, writing checks, joining what would soon become something much bigger than one act of kindness on an airplane. And in a small box in Sarah's suitcase, still unopened, lay James's last letter to her, written the morning of that fatal fire. "Take care of our babies," he'd written. "And remember, angels come in all sizes." He couldn't have known how prophetic those words would prove to be. But that revelation, like so many others in this story, was still waiting in the wings, ready to change everything when the moment was right. For now, Sarah closed the photo album, kissed Tyler goodnight, and checked on Emma one last time. Tomorrow would bring more doctors, more decisions, more steps forward on this unexpected journey. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was walking it alone. 6 months after that fateful flight, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting Tyler's brand new Phoenix Suns jersey. The invitation to tonight's game had arrived mysteriously in their mailbox last week, including VIP passes and a handwritten note. It's time to share the whole story. Shaq. Emma, now a healthy 1-year-old, bounced in her walker, her surgical, scars barely visible beneath her tiny basketball-themed dress. The difference in her energy since the successful surgery was miraculous. Gone were the blue-tinged lips and labored breathing. Instead, her laugh echoed through their new house, a mysterious gift from an anonymous donor that sat closer to Phoenix Children's Hospital than their old rental. "Ready, big guy?" Sarah asked Tyler, who hadn't taken off his oversized Shaq jersey since it arrived with the tickets. "Ready?" He grinned, revealing his missing front tooth. "Do you think the giant angel will remember us?" The arena was packed when they arrived. Their escort led them to courtside seats, where a small sign read, "Reserved for the Matthews family." During the first half, Tyler cheered every play, while Emma slept peacefully in Sarah's arms, unbothered by the crowd's roars. At halftime, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit center court, where Shaquille O'Neal stood, looking somehow even taller than Sarah remembered. 6 months ago, his voice boomed through the arena. "I met a family at this airport." The Jumbotron played clips from the viral video, but what nobody knew was why that moment meant so much to me. The screen changed to an old photograph, a little girl in a hospital bed, smiling despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her. Sarah gasped as she recognized Shaq's eyes in the child's face. "This is my sister, Aisha," Shaq continued, his voice softening. "She had the same heart condition as little Emma Matthews. But this was before my NBA days, before I could afford the best doctors. We lost her 2 days before her 6th birthday." The arena fell silent. Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks as Shaq went on. For years, I've been quietly helping families facing similar battles. But meeting Sarah and her children that night, seeing that same fear in another mother's eyes, I knew it was time to do more. He gestured to the side court, where a group of people emerged. Doctors, nurses, and families. Lots of families, each with children wearing heart surgery survivor medals. Tonight, I'm proud to announce the Emma's Heart Foundation, Shaq declared. Named after a little warrior who reminded me of my sister, this foundation will ensure that no family fights this battle alone. Every child deserves a chance at life, regardless of their family's financial situation. Sarah hadn't noticed Tyler slipping away until she saw him running onto the court. Security started to move, but Shaq waved them off, kneeling down to the boy's level. Tyler threw his arms around the basketball legend's neck, his small frame barely spanning Shaq's shoulders. "Thank you for being Mommy's angel," Tyler's voice echoed through Shaq's microphone, causing a wave of awes to ripple through the crowd. Shaq lifted Tyler onto his shoulders and gestured for Sarah to join them. Walking onto the court, Emma secure in her arms, Sarah finally understood Jenny, the flight attendant's cryptic message about there being more to Shaq's story. "Sarah," Shaq addressed her directly, his voice carrying through the arena. "Your late husband was a hero who gave his life saving others. Now, it's our turn to honor his memory by saving lives in a different way." Emma's Heart Foundation will help families like yours, like mine once was, to focus on what matters, their children's health, without worrying about bills or mortgages or lost jobs. The crowd erupted in applause as more families joined them on court, all recipients of anonymous help over the past 6 months, all part of what would become Emma's Heart Foundation's first success stories. As camera flashes lit up the arena, Sarah looked up at Tyler perched on Shaq's shoulders, at Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms, and at the photo of Aisha still displayed on the Jumbotron. She thought of James's last letter. Angels come in all sizes. Indeed, they did. Sometimes they wore firefighter uniforms and gave their lives for strangers. Sometimes they came in the form of 7-foot-tall basketball legends, with hearts even bigger than their stature. And sometimes they looked like tiny warriors like Emma, whose journey would now help light the way for countless other families. The story that began with a simple act of kindness on an airplane had transformed into something far greater, a legacy that would touch generations to come. As Sarah stood center court, surrounded by families whose lives would change because of this moment, she finally understood. Sometimes the biggest miracles start with the smallest acts of kindness, at just the right moment, at just the right height. Thanks so much for watching. If you really enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, stay tuned for more amazing content. See you in the next one. Talk to you.